The story of Shadow Generations tackles the idea of finding peace within your heart. Shadow has been a character who, since his inception, has carried around the baggage of unrelenting anger. In every aspect of his life, Shadow has found reason to harbor this hatred and anger inside of him, letting it become the driving force behind his every action. Yet, one person in his life became a beacon of light and hope, allowing Shadow to let go of his selfish anger, and instead, fight so that others may have a chance to be happy. But how did Maria become this light in the engulfing darkness that was consuming Shadow? And how did this ultimately save Shadow's life? Join me today as I break down the importance of Maria and Shadow's friendship. But before we get any further, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more Sonic lore and character breakdowns. Feeling different or abnormal can be a terrifying and quite stressful experience. There are many factors in life that can lead you to feeling like you don't quite fit in with those around you. Oftentimes, as a result of this, you might feel a sense of isolation. Being created from alien DNA aboard the Ark, Shadow had grown up feeling exactly this. What had made Shadow unique from the rest aboard the Ark was used against him, as others viewed him with either disgust or intrigue. Because of this, Shadow harbored a deep-seated anger towards the DNA from which he spawned. The way that others viewed Shadow led to him hating himself, feeling that if this larva is a heartless creature, then so too is he. Despite most aboard the Ark viewing Shadow as either some freakish experiment or weapon, one person was able to see through all of that, and instead look at his heart and character above all else. When Shadow gives into his doubt and lets others define him, look at the lighting during the scene.
It's just... the professor created me using alien DNA. The Black Arms, he called them. The same DNA as this larva. This ugly, heartless creature. I may look like a hedgehog, but I'm really no different than this thing.
It all starts to go black as despair takes over and he begins to feel alone. Now look at how light is restored when Maria comes to hug Shadow.
It's not true. You have a big heart. It may be difficult for you to express it, but I know that deep down you really do care.
Maria points out here that Shadow has a hard time expressing emotions, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't care. She knows by his actions just how big his heart is. The acknowledgement that Maria gives Shadow here is very important. Society often overlooks people who have a hard time expressing emotions. Trauma, depression, autism. There's a multitude of factors that can make it hard for a person to outwardly express their emotions, but it doesn't mean that they don't care. Sometimes emotion is expressed in other ways, such as acts of kindness. Maria being able to understand this is a key element to their budding friendship. During his time aboard the Ark, Shadow was meant to be used as a means to cure Maria of her illness. However, despite Gerald's many efforts to find a way to utilize Shadow in such a manner, the results were never quite there. With his close friendship to Maria, all that Shadow wanted to achieve was saving his best friend's life. Yet, he found himself unable to, not only on this occasion. This inner feeling of failure built up in Shadow, consuming him. Not understanding why he couldn't save Maria led Shadow towards feelings of guilt. Over time, this guilt drove him towards darkness and anger. Just like Anakin in Star Wars, the two wanted so desperately to save the one person that they cared for most in the world. But in the moment, neither came to the understanding that sometimes life is just outside of our control. Seeing Shadow's guilt and frustration overwhelm him, Maria tells Shadow that the fact that the cure isn't working doesn't matter to her. She knows that both Gerald and Shadow are putting their best effort towards curing her, and that's all that she can really ask for. Even at her young age, Maria understands that life isn't something that you can control. While she does hope for the best, the thing that comforts her most is the love and compassion that her grandfather and Shadow show her. She knows within her heart that is what matters most. Unfortunately, this idea that your best effort is enough isn't one that resonated with Shadow. Much like Anakin, Shadow snapped when he lost the one person that he tried hardest to save. That light that was guiding Shadow towards a better version of himself had been snuffed out, and the darkness began to creep in, filling him with guilt, anger, and hatred. For years, Shadow would hold on to this feeling of guilt and anger, letting it toil inside his mind. His anger would become his call to action, and his rage would be his most dangerous weapon. Upon entering white space, Shadow finds himself haunted by what he believes to be ghosts of his past. While this draws forth emotions from Shadow, he chooses to write it off. In his mind, what's done is done, and confronting the past is something that's too painful for him to even consider. However, later he would find his hand forced as he hears the cries for help from Maria. As he rushes towards her aid, it's interesting to note that visually we can see the anger and hate that Shadow is fighting with. His eyes shine a bright red, fueled by rage, and the dark aura of Black Doom begins to overtake him as he succumbs to these primal feelings. After defeating his foes, Maria turns and faces Shadow for the first time in what has been over 50 years for the Hedgehog. Seeing her face to face, all of his anger dissipates. He's caught off guard, yet becomes relaxed by the presence of his friend from long ago. After this interaction, Shadow quickly realizes that Gerald and Maria are caught in time before the incident on the Ark. He questions if he can change fate and save them. As Shadow battles his way through time, trying so desperately to save Maria and Gerald, it becomes apparent to Shadow that his new abilities are linked to Black Doom. Gerald reveals to Shadow that Black Doom will either use Shadow as a weapon or take over his body. The more desperate that Shadow became to save Maria during this adventure, the more he turned towards anger. This is all part of Black Doom's plan. He wants Shadow to fight with all of his anger, so that his darkness can consume him, and finally, he can take over Shadow's body and mind. Determined to beat Black Doom once and for all, Shadow's rage begins to swell within him as the dark aura once again emanates from his body. It's at this moment that Maria interferes. She begins to worry that her friend is becoming someone who he isn't. Once again, as Maria conveys what Shadow should be fighting for, light and peace begin to find him. Maria is a beacon of light that pulled him out of darkness. While she believes that Shadow should battle, she doesn't want his driving factor to be anger or hate. If he battled with that inside his heart, he would lose himself to the darkness. Instead, she directs him to battle so that he and others may find peace and happiness. While the fire inside Shadow had calmed, he still felt conflicted hearing this from Maria and darted away. Shadow knows what is to become of Maria in the future. Would she give him the same speech if she had known her fate? It's something that Shadow must have pondered over as he continued his battle with Black Doom. In the final hours of Black Doom's plan, he beckons out to Shadow, taunting the Hedgehog, trying to make him give in to his anger. It's once again similar to Star Wars. The Emperor so desperately wanted Luke to give in to his anger and hate, because by then, Luke would be no different than Anakin, and the battle would be over before it began. But just like Luke was able to resist the temptation of anger and hate, Shadow reveals his inner light. No longer is he holding on to that rage that he had bottled up over the years. Maria had shown him a better way. The light emanating from Shadow shows us that despite what the world thought of Shadow and what Black Doom had believed he would become, the faith and kindness from his friend allowed Shadow to see the light and find his own path in life. Without the compassion and love that Maria showed Shadow, he would have inevitably fallen to the darkness and lost the battle. Sadly, with Black Doom defeated, the time anomaly begins to heal, sending Gerald and Maria back into the time stream. Shadow is willing to pause time forever to be with those he loves, Maria and Gerald, keeping them from a fate that he wouldn't wish upon anyone. But Maria's final words bring solace to Shadow.
I know I'll see you again. And if fate draws us apart, I will always be in your heart.
Maria.
At the end of it all, Maria and her kindness allowed Shadow to see that no matter the obstacle you're up against in life, there is always a better way to tackle the situation rather than resorting to anger. She was the light that Shadow needed in life, and now he will carry her always in his heart. Let me know what you guys thought about Shadow's story and growth as a character in Shadow Generations in the comments below. If you want more Sonic lore, check out the video here, and make sure that you're subscribed for more videos, as we are now just a month away from the third Sonic movie. With all of that out of the way, I wish you all the best. Take care. Peace.
Eggman can't catch us now. We'll beat him somehow.